Anya, aka Strangely Literal.
And I'm Alan, and this is Shadows and Shamblers.
Please stand as you are able for this week's reading, which comes to us from the book of Emma Gonzalez. This is what matters. The majority of American people have become complacent in a senseless injustice that occurs all around them. Most American politicians have become more easily swayed by money than by the people who voted them into office. My friends are dead, along with hundreds upon hundreds of others all over the United States. Now you may be seated. And we're really happy to announce that we have a special guest for this episode. So welcome, Jonita Davis.
Hello, everyone.
So if you've listened to our podcast at all before, you know that Jonita writes about pop culture for the site Black Girl Nerds, as well as freelancing on parenting, race, and other topics for a variety of publications, including The Washington Post, New York Times, Sci-Fi Wire, and many more.
Yeah, that's me. So I just love to analyze and write about pop culture and social issues, stuff about my kids, not too much else really.
We're very excited to have you because we've really admired your take on the show, and it's really heavily informed the way that we try to think about American gods. And we've been pointing people to you since I think your first article on the show. So we're excited to talk to you.
Thanks.
This week, we rewatched American Gods, episode number 6, A Murder of Gods, and we wanted to talk about it in light of the conversation on gun control that's a result of the massacre of 17 people at the Parkland High School in Florida on February 14th, 2018. And when we're recording this, that was just a couple of weeks ago. Many of the surviving students from that tragedy have become outspoken gun control advocates, and they've gotten the conversation about gun control to stick in a way that it hasn't in past shootings in America.
And so I'll just give a quick summary of the relevant parts of the episode. We'll be, I think, mostly ignoring all of the sort of just continuity, character development, blah, blah, blah. So it starts in the prologue where a Mexican coyote smuggles a group of people across the Rio Grande River. And after they cross the river, a vigilante militia attacks, killing Jesus and the other immigrants with bullets that were made in the Vulcan factory. Later on in the episode, Shadow and Mr. Wednesday arrive in Vulcan, West Virginia, and meet the god Vulcan, who runs the town. The townspeople are memorializing the death of a worker from the gun factory who died in a workplace accident that actually functions as a sacrifice that gives Vulcan more power. Mr. Wednesday convinces Vulcan to join the old gods and forge him a sword, but when Vulcan betrays Shadow and Wednesday, Wednesday uses his sword to sacrifice Vulcan for his cause. So Jonita, I know Alan and I immediately thought of this episode as the Parkland students started speaking up in the news and were getting pushback from the NRA and different guns rights advocates. So was that the same for you?
Yes. Immediately I started hearing Wednesday's monologue again. As this news starts coming in,
Everyone in this particular town is a dedicated citizen, dedicated to one sticky belief. America. Their America. There aren't just two Americas. Everyone looks at Lady Liberty and sees a different face. Even if it crumbles under question, people will defend the warm, safe feeling their America gives them. They will defend it with bullets.
Got these kids who are in mourning and asking for something to be done, and these adults who are telling them these idiotic, giving them these excuses that don't make any sense at all. And so I started hearing Wednesday say, talking about their America and they will protect it with guns. And it just sent chills. I'm like, was American Gods prophetic or something? What's going on? So yeah. I've been thinking about this since the day this all started, and I'm so glad you guys are doing this because I think it's so connected.
So this episode originally aired on June 4th, 2017, and so much that it has to say is just super spot on about the way that the gun rights and gun control are talked about and sort of like ingrained in our culture. And I feel like it got a lot of traction and a lot of credit for being accurate, sort of among the small audience of people who are really into the show. But because, like Emma Gonzalez said, like Americans had gotten, somewhat complacent or disappointed, figured out that there was no way to actually implement gun control or no political will, it really got ignored by the broader culture. And so, yeah, I'm really hoping that people will go back and watch this episode because it's such a powerful metaphor.
Right. I think it brings like all of the little images and the music kind of together to kind of show us what we've been dealing with and show it to us in such a different way that I know when I first watched the episode, it hit me as, oh my God, I can't believe that this is what's going on. This is what it really looks like. Yeah. So you just kind of takes things and flips it around and shows it back to us. And it's really horrifying.
Yeah. And it's interesting. In my head, I felt like the entire episode took place in Vulcan, West Virginia, and going back and rewatching it, it's actually like a pretty small part of the episode. It's maybe like 15 minutes of the hour-long episode. Like, honestly, if I was on the Starz marketing team right now, I would cut out that 15-minute segment, maybe, like put it together with the prologue, put that shit on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah. Hint, Starz. Okay.
Yeah.
Some free marketing advice. Right. Yeah, I was really struck, like, rewatching the episode. The whole episode is heightened in a way that when I watched it at the time, I was like, okay, like, this works for fiction, but I don't really feel like this is how it is in America. But in this moment and in this time right now, the pitch of the debate really does feel this intense to me. Traditionally, for me, like, I've come down on this issue of, like, I think it's not a bad thing that Americans have the right to have weapons. If you compare like the rest of world history, to that issue, every time that the common people have not been allowed to have weapons, like it's been really bad to be one of those common people. Like it's not a good thing to be an unarmed citizen under a government. But at the same time, like there's something unbalanced, something badly unbalanced about what's happening in our culture, even within the last 20 years, but especially it feels like more and more lately. Like this time is intense. And I think this episode speaks directly to that intensity.
Yeah, everything that's happening right now seems a bit surreal. My kids are even, really into it and talking about walkouts and ways to protest and things like that. So, it's like for the whole family. If you have a family, it's kind of a surreal moment. And talking about this episode kind of gives us a way of processing what's happening now. Yeah, can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah, I'm really glad, Jonita, that you brought up this idea of the like their America. And I think like from the beginning of the scene in Vulcan, that's sort of like one of the arguments that the episode is making. American culture is pretty fractured and polarized right now, and that there's a certain segment of America that is really wedded to this sort of like constellation of issues that they're not related to each other in any like philosophical or fundamental way. They're just sort of like something that's been packaged together by conservative America.
Yeah.
Kind of like by chance. And so it's sort of like guns, a fetishization of like factory and industrial work, religion, patriotism, and then anti-immigration stances. I'm a biologist, and in medicine we talk a lot about like syndromes, which are like things that all kind of come together, and they aren't necessarily all caused by the same things, but they tend to like occur together, and it's almost like a syndrome of symptoms.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've not thought of it that way, but it because it all does seem to come together, but they shouldn't come together. This stuff should not. You wouldn't think that it would all make sense. I mean, because with the religion, it's all about, if you're a biblical person, killing is bad. violence is bad. But then we have people with guns in church, and churches that are, that are kind of backing the NRA. And so you've got these things that shouldn't go together, but they are. So I think syndrome is a very good way of describing it.
I do feel like the episode directly references that idea. At one point, Vulcan is like kind of speechifying to Wednesday and Shadow, and he says at one point, "We are what we worship." He's like holding a pistol in his hand, and he's talking about the people who buy his ammunition and guns. And he's directly talking about a commercial product there. And I do feel like that is the way that this happens. Like, how do you get somebody who believes it's wrong to abort a baby, also get them to believe that it's right to kill somebody with a lethal injection? Like, how do you get somebody to do that? And the way that you do it is you package a product, and that product is a political ideology, a political team. And you say like, we won, we are fighting against this or that. And then it doesn't matter if there are these dichotomies that like don't line up and are too confusing to contain in your mind, because the most important thing is that like you're supporting the product. You are what you worship. So if you are like, I'm a conservative, if that's the part of your identity that you're feeding into, then you're just on board for whatever that has been predefined by somebody else to be, because you're like, this is who I am.
Yeah, I like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it fits in with a lot of the talking points, I think, of the Parkland students, which is the NRA is not an organization for gun owning people. Like, it's not for huntsmen. It's an arm of the gun manufacturing lobby. These ideas, yeah, like you said, they didn't come from nowhere. They came from people who want to make money from selling guns. And so they have to like convince people that this is something that they want in spite of the cost and the sacrifice.
Right. And I don't know, going back to the episode, I kind of look at the way when we talk about packaging and selling this idea to people, the way the episode started with like almost like a tour, like we're following this, worker going through we know he's going to be sacrificed. But I mean, when you're following him in the beginning of the scene, it looks like, he's giving you a tour of the factory. And the Partridge Family is playing their song, Come On, Get Happy, while you're watching bullets being made, bullets that are meant to kill people, men. But we're going through this factory and this happy song is being played. The image is like this really violent, harsh. There's fire, there's forges. This is not pretty. It's not safe. But we're still watching all of this and listening to this music. I think the way that the showrunners put this together with how this image clashing with this soundtrack, I think speaks to the way the packaging of this idea of guns and safety and even the patriotism and all that together, the way it's coming together for conservatives, how despite, the fact that they don't go together, they're not supposed to, they're still given enough, of a, hey, this is still a good idea. And they're being told this by enough people and given enough almost sweetener, to kind of stomach it. I mean, even when the guy falls into the molten, metal, this song is still playing. So,
Yeah.
But, so it's supposed to be, I mean, they're telling you, be happy. This is a good thing. This is, we're all really, yay. And, so you can forget that you're watching this horrific thing that's happening. So I think, to me, that's the way the gun lobby and the NRA kind of play out, is that what they're doing is one thing, and what the message they're trying to sell is something totally different. It's a really, really, really good marketing team that they have doing this, and who's been building this for decades. I think the show kind of speaks to, how this is being, a little bit to how this is being done. I mean, I don't think we know fully how, it works, but I think that that's part of it, with the clash of the imagery and the soundtrack, and what's being said and what's being seen not coming together.
It really highlights the cognitive dissonance of sort of like, I think gun rights advocates think that guns are making them safer, and they're arguing that more guns will make you safer. But like the reality that you're seeing does not match that message.
Right. But then you still have these lobbyists saying, hey, they're making you safe. They really, really are. It's not matching up. It's not happening. There was an article I saw that said that gun injuries go down during gun conventions and gun shows.
Yeah. I saw that one too. It's crazy.
So another thing they say is, guns don't kill people. People kill people. And if you're a safe gun owner, and you're NRA member, or NRA members are supposed to be safe gun owners, then there should be no injuries or anything like that, right? So why are the numbers going down when you people are off doing your business and being preoccupied, by this convention? Why, and then when you're done with your convention, they spike right up again. What's happening? 20%. They said the injuries go down by 20%. Yeah, again, it's the dissonance, the what's being said not meshing with what the reality is. So
in the episode, when that worker dies, that the reason for it is because it's cheaper for the insurance company to pay out a settlement on the accident than it is to overhaul the entire safety of the factory and bring it up to a proper code where everybody is safe. And I feel like that is such an apt metaphor for this situation, right? Because we're told over and over again that the price that you pay for the right to bear arms is that from time to time we will have a massacre. And it just seems like untenable to me. And also, it feels completely disingenuous because the truth of the matter is that these people don't care about our right to bear arms or patriotism or any of these things. It's simply a profit motive. It's simply, we represent a profitable industry. And the fact that the industry that they represent happens to be enshrined in the Constitution gives them access to, to invoke the Constitution itself and patriotism and, push that button in the culture in a way that, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to own a Ford or something like that. Like other industries just don't have access to that marketing tool, and they don't care about safety or patriotism. They care about making money, which is fine. Like people have the right to do that, but be honest about it. Don't sell me this thing of like, oh, you're a great American for doing this. Like what you're really doing is pushing me in a volcano and feeding off of my blood like a god. Like you're feeding on the blood of children to sell your guns. That's literally what you're doing.
How many school shootings have we had since the year started? 12? Is that the number?
Every town came out with a number that Parkland was the 18th. But then there was another article put out, I think maybe by the Washington Post, saying that they didn't agree with the way that every town was doing their statistics, that basically every town was counting any time a gun was discharged on a school campus, regardless of what time of day. And we'll link to that article in the show notes. The number's a little bit lower if you only count shootings that either injure someone or that happen while students are on campus. But it's still way too many.
Right. And you notice that, again, we have to make stipulations to make sure we get the numbers right, because they will come after you if you spit out the wrong data. And that's how crazy this world has gotten about this. I mean, the fact that there's been more than 10 school shootings, no matter how a gun was discharged or whatever, that should be cause for alarm. So it's mind-boggling. It really, really is.
And I think another important point, so we've talked a bit about sort of like the corporate motivations for like reinforcing gun ownership and gun rights. But I think it also needs to be stated, and lots of people have been stating that it's like not just about these corporations making money. It's also about like reinforcing white supremacy and male privilege. There's a really great article in The Atlantic that was talking about how the gun violence is basically necessary to maintain white male privilege, that it gives this certain group of people an edge in every interaction that they have, that they could be carrying a gun. So you can't like disrespect them or fail to please them, or you might face the consequences of their like rage and anger. And I think that's like made pretty evident by the differential way that gun rights are applied to white people and to Black people, right? You know, like white people can march around with assault rifles and protest and be fine, but like, you know, a 10-year-old Black kid has a toy gun and suddenly he gets shot by the police, and then the police aren't even reprimanded for that. You know, like they don't lose their job, much less go to jail. Like that's insane.
Exactly.
And that like we should all just refuse to talk about gun rights, period. Like it needs to be gun rights for white people. Like that should be the full phrase.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you notice, one thing I noticed about Vulcan, that it's white people. I mean, I think I went back to look. I don't think I saw any diversity at all in that town. I mean, and the way that the god himself treated Shadow, I mean, he was talking about lynching. Seriously.
Yeah.
This guy is your guest, and the way that he treated Wednesday versus Shadow, you know, it was like, and he didn't care how different it came across. That was kind of telling, and I think it's almost a given in the Black community that when gun rights are talked about, it's not talked about for us. Yeah, it's something that, you know, I think any people of color are kind of excluded from the conversation. No matter how many Black people the NRA trots out when they're doing their ads or their speeches or whatever, it's not for us. And I think that the episode kind of made that pretty clear.
The whole relationship between conservatives and the Black community is like mind-boggling and kind of like ridiculous in the way that, you know, it's like gun violence in Chicago is used to justify like certain policing policies. But when it comes to things that might actually make it harder for people to get guns and actually decrease that gun violence, like they don't care.
No.
You know, Black people who get accidentally shot by cops, they can pay the price. But, you know, white people who want to shoot AR-15s on the weekends, that's too much of a price to pay.
Yeah, way too much. And the premise is, I guess, well, to me, when I hear that, is that the responsible gun owner is the white gun owner and everyone else should not be armed. So
yeah.
Now they've been trying to kind of mix up the audiences a bit. I don't know if you saw some of their, what was that, a town hall meeting or whatever that the NRA had. But the audience was mixed. But I'm like, how many of those people were just trotted in to fill seats just to make this seem like a diverse discussion? And it never is. It never really is at all.
Yeah, and you're so right that in the episode itself, Shadow seems way more uncomfortable with all of the gun violence than anybody else there. It's clearly that he sees it through a racial lens that no one else is really caring about.
Right. Well, and you know, Wednesday has his agenda. You know, he needs to, which that's another layer right there. So we have these people in our society who really don't agree with this NRA conservative BS, you know, that's going on, but they're complacent with it because they need the cooperation or collaboration or whatever of the people who do believe in that. So they will go along with it. They will support it, even if it doesn't benefit Black people or benefit the kids in school carrying, you know, because somebody might have a gun. But it does fit their needs. So, I mean, Wednesday kind of fits that segment of the population of our Congress. I think a lot of our congressmen are this way. They don't agree with it, but they'll go along with it because they need the funding or they need the votes or whatever that the lobbyists in the NRA provide. Which they're just as that makes them just as toxic as the people who are wholeheartedly believing in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the episode is also making like the racial aspect of that textual with the way that it opens with the immigrants crossing over to America. And, you know, like everybody is a person of color in that scene. and they are all, gunned down by the Vulcan bullets that are also like embossed on the side with phrases from the Bible. So there's a co-opting of religion in there, of Christian religion, by the power structure behind the guns to serve that, gun agenda. It's not serving the actual religion, which they are literally killing in that scene. They are killing Jesus in that scene, while having biblical verses on their guns. They're literally being co-opted by the gun power. I mean, that you can't get more explicit with the entire metaphor of the show right there. They're killing people of color in the name of their God, but actually being, serving the gun owners. Like that's the whole episode right there. Yeah, and bringing up the lynching and all of that stuff with Shadow just underlines, and the way that Ricky Whittle plays it, I think, is perfect, where he's just constantly, as they're slowly rolling down that street with that great opening monologue that you talked about, the comfortable America, the look on his face as he sees the people with the, the symbols on their arms, kind of like a Nazi type of thing. He's just like, man, like, let's get out of here. Forget this.
Yeah, and that whole, going back to that whole opening scene, I don't know if you noticed, but the shooters are actually carrying crucifixes. Well, one of them was carrying a crucifix in his hand, while his finger was on the trigger and his sight was on Jesus. So well, it kind of tells you that the guns don't care about Jesus or religion or anything else. They have their own agenda, and their agenda is to kill whoever's in front of it. So
yeah, it reminds me so much of those pictures that were circulating online from the Associated Press. They had those photos of that like creepy gun blessing ceremony from Pennsylvania, where people are wearing like crowns of bullets and like hugging their rifles in church. Like, I felt like looking at those pictures, it looked like something that maybe would have been proposed in the American Gods writers room and then been like, no, that's too over the top. Like, that's too much metaphor even for our show. And then it just like is happening in real life.
See, when I saw those pictures, I thought it was a hoax. I really thought that it wasn't real. And then I'm watching ABC Evening News, and it's there, and I'm like, wow. This is really happening. And that's why I think on Twitter I said this town is in the Rust Belt, where everything's steel factories and mills. If there's a steel mill at the end of Main Street, we need to get out of here. Brian Fuller is writing 2018, and we're going to be screwed over. But yeah, those images, if those images did not scare or at least make you uncomfortable, anyone out there, then I do not know what's going to change your mind about gun violence and how toxic guns are in our country. To me, they seem to be the people who have taken the message that was sent out wholeheartedly. And I think they're the people that we weren't supposed to see. They're the people who drank all of the Kool-Aid. And so I think these are the people that we were not supposed to see. So kudos to whoever the reporter was who got these photos, because I have a feel, to me, it just kind of felt like something that we were like looking in on a dirty secret of the NRA and the gun lobby, and, that had just been, kind of let out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. It's really weird. Like, and, I think this goes to like another thing that I write about on my blog sometimes, and that I think is really like a core issue in our time, about like the virtue of antagonizing your enemies. Like, that's really like the only, it's not about like an actual ideology where you believe in things. It's about like, those people are the bad guys, and anything that we can do to antagonize them is virtue. Like, it's not about making anything or building anything. It's like, these people get together and they go, man, wouldn't it make the libs crazy if we put on crowns of bullets? And it has nothing to do with any of their actual beliefs in like capitalism or individualism that, you know, could be like good core American values. Otherwise, like if they are reined in, you know, like any ideology can become toxic if you take it too far. But like this isn't an even ideology. It's just like, just make those people over there pissed off. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, why? It doesn't even make sense. All the power, all three forms of government are in their favor, and they can't pass any legislation because they don't actually believe in anything right now. It doesn't. And so like when Obama won and he had the Congress and the Senate and the presidency, they passed legislation within weeks, and it took Trump months to get anything done. And even in the face of like massive tragedies like this and polling numbers that say 9 out of 10 people want gun reform, like nothing happens because there's no vision. But now I'm just ranting.
Right. No. I think you make sense. And I think when we go back to talking about the dissonance and then talking about this syndrome, it's a party with no beliefs, no foundation, nothing to stand on. I think that makes a lot of sense. They're just there to protect their profit margins. So it seems, you know, because a lot of them are big.
Yeah.
They get some big donations from the NRA. So, you know, why not try to, you know, do as much as we can to shut up the gun control talk? Because if this talk continues, then our cash flow is gone. So I think that the only thing they really do stand for, believe in, is their own profit. Otherwise, there's no agenda. There's no real platform anymore at all.
So we've talked a little bit about like the profits and guns as maintaining white supremacy. And then I think the third thing that the episode also really speaks to is like why people are so into guns is getting drunk on the power itself. Vulcan talks about how having a gun is like having a mini volcano in your hand, you know, like it feels good. You know, I'm originally from Texas and I've like shot my fair share of guns. I actually shot an AR-15 over Christmas at a shooting range. There is something that's like kind of intoxicating about having that kind of power in your hands. I personally would never want to own a gun because I just wouldn't want to have to be responsible for that or think about it all the time. But like I can see having a gun does give you a sense of agency and a sense of power. It's a little bit of an illusion. A lot of gun owners have come out with op-eds or essays recently about the like type of vigilance that you have to have as a gun owner and as someone who's always carrying, you know, like it changes what your life is like. You do have to be always vigilant, always thinking about where your gun is, if it's loaded. Like having that power makes you constantly suspicious and aware of what's going on. Like it's not a fun, relaxed life. It's like a really anxious life where you're constantly prepared to be under attack. But we don't have to live that way. But maybe people don't realize that.
Right. I can see that. I grew up, well, did part of my growing up in Arkansas. And my husband's family's from Arkansas. I've never shot anything more than just a hunting rifle, but I did see, I wasn't sure if it was an AR-15, but it was an automatic weapon shot, you know, by one of our neighbors. The look in the guy's eyes when he shot it is what I remember, because his eyes went wild while he was shooting it. And is you know, my friend's dad, you know, I knew this guy's, you know, great dad. He was a great husband, you know, but when you put this gun in his hands and he started shooting it, his eyes got wild. And I remember thinking that, you know, he could turn around and start shooting all of us. And he's second, he looked so crazy, you know. What you said about that power in your hands, how that power in your hands changes you. I think you're onto something there, especially when you get a gun with that much firepower in it. Seeing this guy just transform while he's shooting this weapon, and it stayed with me, you know. And we don't own guns because I can't have that around my kids. I really can't.
Yeah.
I don't have any guns either. But when I was in high school, like it wasn't a military school, but there was like a ROTC program, which I think is at a lot of schools, which is like a low grade recruiting tool. But I took it to get out of gym, because who the hell wants to go to gym? You could go in the rifle team, and our rifle coach was actually like an Olympian in shooting the rifle. Like he had several gold medals, and he had coached a lot of rifle teams in the Olympics. And so I was actually really well trained on, like, I'm a really good shot with a rifle. And so I went through training for that, and I've done like hunters training courses. I've never gone hunting. Like, it's not something that interests me. I would rather not like sit out in the cold. And, you know, I've taken all those classes, and I've held and shot guns. And so I know what that feeling is like. And like I said, I think that was a wise thing to put into the Constitution. You know, those guys were really thinking about tyranny when they wrote that thing, because of everything that they had experienced. And, you know, for a couple generations back in the founding of the country, I mean, you know, leave alone all the hypocrisy that's, you know, built into the slave ownership and the massacre of the Indians. Like, of course, you know, there's like terrible problems at the root of our country. But I think that saying that people were allowed to have weapons is not necessarily a bad thing, but we've mixed it up so much, and I really think that we've gone too far. And, you know, like, I think all of the safety stuff and the training that I had was like a benefit to me, as opposed to somebody, like you said, who is at a party or something like that and just got to crack off, you know, a magazine of a fully automatic rifle, who didn't know what he was doing and probably hadn't been trained, and just like got drunk on the power of that. Like, that's an extremely dangerous situation that, you know, I think that a lot of people are experiencing that, or have a fantasy about it, especially these young kids in schools, want to feel powerful. When they get that gun, then they feel like, finally, like, you know, I can get my revenge or do whatever I want. And the people who put that gun in their hand don't care about that power, that situation, or any of that. They just care about the money. We can't just stand by and let that happen. Like, it's not okay. These are our kids.
Right. And so there's this argument I know with my in-laws who are gun owners, and they are so my husband's family, they're gun owners, they're a gun owning family, but everyone goes through extensive training before you can hold a gun. You know the impact of this weapon that you have in your hands. So that makes it that much harder to argue with them when, like, the Parkland shooting happens, or, you know, any kind of shooting where a gun is kind of discharged by a person who really, really wasn't prepared. Not everybody gets the training. And maybe, you know, like you said, the training changed you. It'll prepare you. And maybe, you know, that's what is needed, but not everybody's getting it. And that's the problem. So instead of stopping the conversation with safe gun training, you know, guns are no problem. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. And, you know, they're really big into saying that. But they shut it down by talking about gun safety and training and all this, because it does work. It does work. Because you are taught how the impact of this weapon, but you're not getting gun training when you're buying these weapons from Walmart or Dick's or, you know, Kroger even. Did you know they sell guns at Kroger at Pacific Northwest?
That's crazy.
Yeah, found that out on Twitter, by the way, this week. So anyway, that's a tangent. But anyway, you're not getting those safety lessons when you're walking up and paying your money, getting that instant background check. Don't talk to me about background checks, because they're just about instant. Sometimes they take, you know, not even a day, and you get a gun. So if that's the solution, great. Start incorporating these training classes, processes, whatever. But something has to be done other than shutting the conversation down, because, I mean, we have so many things that we know what works. Why don't we start implementing them, using them? And it's like you said, because if we stop and you put a barrier, that's going to slow up the cash flow, man. If you can't just walk up to the counter and just buy a weapon, and it's going to take you, you know, 6 months of training, who the hell wants to do that? You know? Yeah, I think that's going to slow up the cash flow, and they don't want to do that. So,
you know, it's funny, Alan, that you brought up deer hunting, because I feel like, or I guess hunting in general, but deer hunting is actually an issue that I'm like pretty passionate about in the pro direction. because my training is in ecology, and deer overpopulation is actually a really big problem, both in terms of like car accidents that actually cause harm to people, but also a lot of plant species are endangered because there are too many deer and they just overgraze everything. Because, we've gotten rid of all the top predators like wolves and mountain lions. And so the deer can basically just overpopulate to the point where both they're like really unhealthy because they don't have enough food for themselves. And also, they're like decimating plant populations, and then all of the insects that depend on those plants, and then all of the birds that depend on those insects. So I actually think like we need more deer hunters and people who are like passionate about and trained in sort of like animal control that way. Those are not necessarily the same people who are worshiping the NRA and fighting for the right to get instant access to AR-15s, right? Because those people who are actually going to be out there and like playing an important role as sport hunters, like all these little barriers like background checks and waiting periods, like that's not going to deter them. And those are the people who the deterrences aren't, those programs aren't made to deter them.
The other thing about that is no hunter is going to go out in the woods with an AR-15.
Right.
Like that's not how you hunt. It's a single shot enterprise. You're taking a very careful aim and you're hitting exactly where you want to and when you want to. Your shot should take the animal down on the first hit. And then if not, like, then you track the animal and finish it. But yeah, I agree. Conserving the animal population is really important. And I didn't mean to like, it's not my thing is really what I was saying. Like, I'm just not into it. And that's why I don't own a gun. And I don't want a handgun because I have 2 small children and I'm just not, I feel like if there's a gun around, it's exactly what you said. It's an anxiety inducing to me. And I'm going to worry about when my kids are not directly in my line of sight.
Yeah. My kids get into everything, man. They are into everything. And so I could not, it would be a mess worried about them getting at, I don't care how many lock boxes, cast iron safes or whatever you have. My 2-year-old can break my password and get into my my tablet. I really don't. We don't have one because I don't need that type of worrying here. I'm more worried about the 2-year-old taking the gun and pointing it at one of the teenagers. Because they took her gummy bears or something. I'm just really not. I'm not. That's the biggest fear for me. I'm more worried about that than, an intruder coming into the house. Yeah. Because that's more likely to happen. And I think that legitimate deer hunters they're used as cover by these people that are trying to keep the conversation quelled for gun control. They just kind of throw the hunters in saying, oh, they're talking about you guys too. Just to kind of just rile up everybody and get them to shut down any conversation about doing anything about this.
It's not like the NRA wants more shootings at schools and stuff like that, but they want to pretend like their behavior and advocacy has nothing to do with the school shootings. Yeah. And that is disingenuous and incorrect. I think
they don't think that they're responsible. I don't think they even see any correlation between their guns and the school shootings, and these accidental gun injuries, like the story last year of a toddler getting hold of his mom's handgun in the backseat and shooting the mom, which I'll send you that link so you can put it up with this podcast. But I don't think they see any correlation between their product and those things happening.
In that same vein, it's exactly like in the episode where the entire town shoots guns in the air and then walks off without a second thought about those bullets are going to fall right back down out of the sky. Mm-hmm. And the innocent, unarmed person is the one who has to deal with it, where Shadow has to huddle in the car and hope that the car doesn't get perforated by these bullets and he dies.
Right. The whole crowd walks away. And, in Shadow's face when he's sitting in the car under this rain of bullets, which goes on forever, it seems like, his face is like that. I feel like his face is, kind of representative of what those of us who are like trying to push for some kind of gun control, anything, his face kind of represents that. Like, how do you guys not see this? How do you not see you cause this? How do you not see this? And he's like in so much disbelief. But these people have walked away and it's none of their business. It's not their problem. They don't care anymore,
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about being parents of school-age children?
I have 6 kids altogether. My 17-year-old senior, she's the one who's like really adamant about, who's really upset about everything that's happened. Every time she hears about one of the Parkland kids getting trolled, some rumor or whatever, she gets pissed off. So every time they announce something or they try to say something because of this reaction or whatever, one of the kids wasn't sincere, or because they said this one time and that the next time. Well, every time they come out with something like that, I don't think they realize that they're pissing off the teenagers of America who are going to school and who have to do these drills and who had to do them all week. Actually, my kids actually go to a high school where we've had 2 shootings thwarted by the police.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So one happened last in the fall. There were rumors about a kid coming and getting his dad's guns and coming back to school to shoot because he was mad at somebody or something happened like that. And so the police were able to stop him as he was getting to the school. He did not get to the school, but they did take what the kids said and what the parents called in, the tips and everything. They took him seriously and they did go after the kid. That was in the fall. And then recently, maybe a month ago, there was a Facebook post by a teenager who was talking about coming to school and shooting. The police got together and rounded him up and his parents. But my son, who's 14, he was a freshman, and the kid who was making the threats was a freshman. He didn't feel comfortable going to school that day, and I told him, you don't have to. I mean, these are the days where we have to make these decisions as parents. If the kid doesn't feel safe going to school, do you make them go? What do you talk to them about? What do you say to them? That type of thing. And with the NRA doing their what they do, it just kind of it angers me as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's so scary. And God bless you for having 6 kids. Like, I can't imagine. I have 2 little girls, and they're both in elementary school. And I live in like a tiny, tiny town. And it's actually really frustrating because you were talking about your kids have to do drills. There are no drills at this school for this kind of situation. Wow. And if anybody talks about guns at all, they are immediately shut down. Basically, like, when they say no gun zone, it's like guns don't exist in the universe on that school. Like, that's how the approach is. If we ignore this problem, it won't happen here, which I think is like crazy. That is how the pressure builds. That is how things don't get dealt with. And then, these kids who feel powerless and resentful end up striking out because they held all of that stuff inside of them. I just feel like there's a lack of, and I think this comes back to like underfunding of education within our system, which also goes back to that packaging of things that kind of don't make sense where, like it doesn't, because conservatives are typically anti-union and teachers are unionized, therefore teachers should not get money. It kind of doesn't make sense if you want to be the most excellent nation in the world to underfund your education. Like, as like a goal of conservatives to believe in American exceptionalism, it doesn't really make sense to not invest in the future of your country by overfunding education, maybe. I feel like these kids who are the shooters do this because they feel like they have no power. They're not being heard by people. And maybe if we had more money in the schools, this wouldn't even be an issue about guns. It would be an issue about these kids and where they are in their lives. I mean, the shooter in Florida, Nicholas Cruz, was radicalized by local white supremacists and had marked up all of his bullets with swastikas before. Like, that's a lot of work to sit there, and on the casing of every single bullet, that kid was meditating on something. There was a lot of hatred there. There was a lot of issues. There were no services available to help that kid process his pain. And then his pain became the pain of a community, and in a lot of ways, the pain of a nation. Is it worth it? Like, where are we spending our money? We're worried about all this money coming in from the gun lobby. Like, where's that money going? It's certainly not going into services in the schools for the children that are the future of the country.
When I heard about the swastikas on the bullets, I thought of the Vulcan bullets with the V. Oh, yeah. So, but yeah, they have nothing else. And one of you said that the gun was power in your hand. So if they want power, if they feel powerless, they're going to search out power. And what better power, to get than a gun, especially in some of these communities where there's like, it's so, gun ownership was so widespread, it's probably not hard to find one. So,
a big part of the national conversation about gun control is sort of like the role of mental health, because that it goes along with the argument that like guns don't kill people, people kill people. The pro-gun rights side likes to blame all of these incidents on like, oh, well, it was just this one mentally ill person, guns have nothing to do with it. And yet President Trump rolled back regulations that were designed to keep people who were mentally ill from having easy access to guns. And they're trying to actually, cut mental health funding, remove it from Obamacare provisions, cut school counselors, kind of like what Alan was saying. It's like, even if they genuinely believed that it was a mental health problem and not a gun problem, then why would you not do something to actually address the mental health problem? And instead they're like set on ignoring that one as well. So it comes across, I think, as super disingenuous. It's really stigmatizing towards people who have mental illness, because the vast majority of people who have mental illness, are never violent towards other people. People who are mentally ill are actually more likely to be the target of violence than they are to commit violence. And anything that we do to stigmatize mental illness in general, just makes it harder for people to get the treatment and the care that they really need.
Exactly.
The system is broken in so many ways that are not just related to guns, but that guns kind of fit into.
Yeah. But come on, get happy.
Yeah.
Start dancing. Come on, everything's good.
One of the final thoughts about the episode itself that I wanted to bring up, each bullet is a prayer. And every time someone is injured, it just makes them want to pray harder. That it's like this positive feedback cycle of anytime that there's gun violence, the solution to it is just more guns, which of course then is going to cause more gun violence. And so you end up in the cycle that's accelerating and you can't get rid of it. And the fact that Trump proposed arming teachers,
oh my God, yes.
Genuinely as a genuine solution.
Mm-hmm.
And
people
then
are taking them seriously. They're actually considering it.
Yeah, and then the Florida legislature passed a fucking law about it, which is just insane. Even though a few days later, a school went on lockdown because a teacher had a gun and was brandishing it. Teachers are not magical, beings that are free from mental health issues and flaws themselves,
Exactly.
Aside from the fact that having teachers be armed in the classroom makes it much easier and more likely that a student would be able to get a hold of that gun and do something bad with it. Teachers themselves can be unhinged. I think we all can remember that teacher that you absolutely would not have trusted with a stapler, right. Much less a gun. And so the fact that the Florida legislature allocated $67 million to arm and train teachers when all that money could be put to much better use, by putting counselors into schools to talk to students it's insane.
Right. When you arm teachers, you're putting kids of color at risk. There was a study last year, and there have been studies for quite some time now that talks about the bias that teachers have against kids of color, sometimes even a fear And last year there was a study where it talked about Black girls who are often viewed as less innocent, as bigger troublemakers, and they're punished more often than their white peers. So if you arm teachers who are already dealing with this bias, who are already dealing with all kinds of stress, you give them this gun and this anxiety that goes along with it, it puts kids of color at risk.
And we talk about that anxiety. I mean, imagine what it would be to, want to be a teacher and help educate young people. And then you have to like carry a sidearm in every day and go like, is this the day that I kill one of these students? Like that mental burden would be like unimaginable. Like
Right. It would be. I mean, I taught ninth grade temporarily. I was there only there for 6 months. But let me tell you, I'm not going back because the ability, I mean, having 145 students under my care for a whole day, they each get an hour with me, but for that hour, I'm responsible for them. It's terrifying. And we actually did have shooting drills at that time. And the kids are asking me all these questions about, is somebody really here, and what will we do, and those scenarios on what will we do if somebody actually did come through. It was just sad for me to have to hear them saying that. And then on the other hand, when you're like having to teach them, we ended up having 5 tests, standardized tests, over my 6-month period at the school. Having to teach them for that test and then having to deal with Indiana standards, I was stressed out. And ninth graders don't behave all that well. They're 13, they're 14, 15-year-olds. They don't like sitting in the desk all day. So, and they do mouth off, and they do stress you out. So I know it's a high stress job, and that putting a gun in that situation, I can tell you from experience, is not the thing that needs to be done. And any teacher who's been in a classroom and they've had to deal with, I think they will tell you the same thing. It's not the situation that you want to add a weapon to.
So before we wrap up with some final thoughts, I just had a few articles and podcasts that I wanted to point out that I think had really good ideas that we haven't really quite touched on here yet. So the first one is the 538 Politics podcast has talked about gun control for their past 2 episodes. So on February 20th and on February 26th. On February 20th in particular, they interviewed a historian who was talking about sort of like the different ways that the Second Amendment has been interpreted over the past 200 and some years, and sort of like what its original meaning was when it was written, and how much do we even need to take the original meaning into an account? Like, what does it mean for the Constitution to be a living document? The NRA is almost as old as the Constitution itself. For most of its history, it's just been a fraternal organization for sportsmen. And it really didn't become a political institution or that involved in politics until the 1970s. And prior to the 1970s, the Second Amendment was interpreted really differently. And then there's an article in Bloomberg talking about a gun manufacturer named Taurus. It's like so spot on to the depiction of the Vulcan factory in the episode. It's kind of amazing. Their guns are super defective. They can fire with the safety on, and they can fire just from being dropped or shaken without pulling the trigger. And yet their products have not been recalled. And actually Brazilian police officers are required to carry these weapons. And a lot of police officers have been killed or wounded, and the Brazilian government and the US government are doing nothing. And the gun company is literally just settling for millions of dollars in each of these like wrongful death suits because it's easier to settle than to fix the defective product. And then the final article that I want to point out was from The Atlantic. It's an article by Heather Scher. She's a radiologist who's been working in a trauma center for the past 13 years. And she's basically talking about her perspective as a trauma specialist and a doctor, and that like the physical wounds caused by AR-15s are really different than the physical wounds caused by handguns. And like there's a reason why the fatality counts in these shootings with AR-15s are so high, and that's because The bullets are going much faster. They actually like shred all of the internal organs within like a 2-inch radius. Like there's just nothing left to repair. Like the organs are liquefied. There's no wound to heal. It's just like a soup, basically. There's a reason to single out these high velocity weapons. Yes. So those are my like, aside from the ones that I already mentioned earlier in the podcast, my like sort of top 3 things that I would check out if you're interested in continuing this conversation and learning more.
I'm sure that because this podcast is in your feed that you are an American Gods fan, but maybe like you watched the episode a long time ago when it came out, or maybe you're listening to this episode because it's like a special episode and not so directly tied to American Gods. But in either case, I would say go back and check out that episode because there are just so many things that, I mean, the show, we said this while we were covering it live as it came out, the show felt very prescient. And this episode, it was just like, wow. I mean, the metaphor of the episode just speaks so directly to this moment in American life right now. And it's chilling, but it's also like a really good way to meditate on the situation and think about what we need to do. So I would say go watch American Gods. Well, thank you again so much, Jonita, for talking to us about this. It was a fantastic conversation. And where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Well, on the internet, they can find me on Twitter. Twitter handle is Survey, is teens and tots. Think surviving teens and toddlers, because my kids' age range from 21 to 2. So that handle is at SURVI, and then teens, TEENS, and then an N, and then tots, TOTS. And my website is www.jonitadavis.com. And I wanted to just add here that Black Girl Nerds and several other nerd organizations are putting together a Universal Fan Con. It's a convention that's going to have just everything from all walks of popular culture at the Baltimore Convention Center. But one of the things that I think you guys would be interested in is they're going to have the American Gods actors there. So you can come and see Shadow and Wednesday and several other actors. I will be interviewing them, which will be...
Ooh, awesome. That's so great.
I know, I'm so nervous. I mean, Ricky Whittle is like one of my, is going to be one of the interviewees, and I'm just get nervous every time I think about having to sit across from him and ask him all these great questions, So the fans can meet them, So yeah. That's April 27th through the 29th at the Baltimore Convention Center. Tickets are on sale now, and if you use BGN 2018, you get a special discount.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they can find more information on my website. So
that is fantastic.
And I know a lot of our listeners use the Patreon website to support a lot of artists and podcasters that they love. And Black Girl Nerds, which is run by Jamie Broadnax, they have a Patreon site. So if you are interested, you should check out their content and consider supporting them there. I am a very happy patron of Black Girl Nerds, and I love supporting what you guys do.
Yep, me too. I'm a supporter too. I love that site. It's such an insightful look at all of pop culture, but so important too, like to get, if you're like us, you're people of privilege, you really need to listen to other people, and it's a fantastic site. And it's a lot of fun too. It's great podcasts and everything there is. She is blowing up, and it's really fun to watch, and it's cool to be a part of that too.
Yeah
because I think we Alan and I really found out about them because of your work on American Gods, and so we were there at the beginning and watched that site just take off in popularity, and it's been really fun.
Yes. And I kind of started, I started working with them and, talking to Jamie about, how I like to write about pop culture things. And so she just kind of let me do a little bit, a few articles here and there. And then when I found out that my favorite book, which I have a first edition copy with Neil Gaiman's signature in it. Got it as a push present. So when I found out it was going to be a show on Stars, I'm like, can I write about this for Black Girl Nerds? I was so excited, and she let me. And so that's where I met you guys through those articles. And so it's been a great write ever since. And it's a great outlet for talking about things that I don't get to talk about anywhere else. I mean, who else wants to hear about other than, the small community that I love so much to talk to, you guys and everyone else. But, we're a small population, talking about geeky things. But we matter. So, and the website actually gives us a little bit of an outlet to talk about those things and to kind of share our outlooks. And, for me to kind of point out some of the things in there, like how Laura is, kind of peak privilege. But anyway, and that's my other articles, but that's for another day. So yeah, check it out.
I love it.
Okay, well, with that, I'm Anya, and you can follow me on Twitter at Strangely Literal. That's strangely, then LITERL.
I'm Alan, and you can follow me on Twitter at ChipperAlan. You can follow our show on Twitter at Shadow Shambler, and visit the website at shadowsandshamblers.com for news and hopefully news about the second season coming up sometime next year, we hope, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. There's been some gossip about season 2. For those of you who haven't really been paying attention, Brian Fuller and Michael Green have departed. There's new showrunners, so it seems like things are maybe going to be a little bit delayed, but are still on track to come out. Fingers crossed for some good continuity. We'll see how it goes.
Right.
Right.
Okay, yeah. And of course, if you'd like to leave us feedback, you can visit shadowsandshamblers.com/contact or send an email to contact@hallowedgroundmedia.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and how it relates to the Parkland shooting and gun control and gun rights in general. And yeah, just hear your thoughts on that in general.
Because like Vulcan says, you are what you worship.
Shadow and Shamblers is a Hallowed Ground Media production and is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial share alike license.